and 1 p.m. Eastern. Welcome, everyone, to our second AMA, which is pretty fantastic. We have with us Greg Tennyson, who I consider to be a very good friend and a mentor. He's an amazing man, does incredible things. We're going to get more into his background in a little bit. But before we start, I want to go over a few rules of engagement. Within AMA, obviously, you have the opportunity to ask any question that you want, which is brilliant. There are some things that Greg can and cannot talk about, obviously, as a result of his position. He's privy to a lot of information that may or may not be public. So we're going to try and keep those questions as generalized as possible. If there is anything that Greg can or cannot talk about, he will say so. And he will just basically not answer a question if it's too private, for example. At the bottom of your screen, you will see a very cool feature in Zoom called Q&A. So if you scroll over that and you click on it, you can actually ask a question in that Q&A box. When you ask that question, it will pop up on the screen, and I will be able to ask that question of Greg. I've muted all of your lines automatically, so unfortunately you won't have verbal contact, but you do have the capability to ask Q&A. Additionally, there is a great chat function that's available. So if you scroll over chat and you click chat, you can start talking about things that you want to see. So if you don't ask a question in the Q&A, you can ask it in chat. I'm going to be monitoring both throughout the discussion today. So you can ask questions in either or, it doesn't really matter to me. We also are recording this as well. So if at any point in time you get disconnected and you can't connect back in, don't worry about it. We're going to be posting this in the Slack channel so that you can view it at a later date as well. And that's that. That's all the features and functionalities that I want you to be aware of. So without further ado, Greg Tennyson, welcome.
Thanks, Mark. I look forward to the second AMA live discussion.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it, Greg. It's such a privilege to have you on. Some of our listeners don't know a lot about you, and viewers don't know a lot about you. So maybe before we get into the AMA, you could tell us a little bit about your background, what you've been doing, and what you're doing now at VSP.
I appreciate that. It's interesting. I reflect on my 30-plus year journey. So I've been in the space for over 30 years. I currently head up global corporate services at VSP. So what is corporate services? It's real estate facilities, safety, security, distribution, sourcing, procurement, and travel. So kind of a mishmash of responsibilities. I joined VSP in December of 2013. VSP is a great company. I love our vision. Our vision is to provide access to affordable, high-quality eye care and eyewear to the world. So very philanthropic vision statement, comprised of 5 complementary business units: eye care insurance, high-quality eyewear, lens enhancements, ophthalmic technology, and a connected experience that strengthens our relationship between the patient and their eye doctor. So great company. Been here now for just over 5 years. Prior to that, I was the VP Shared Services and CPO at Salesforce and held that same responsibility at Oracle Corporation. So I've been in the high-tech space roughly about 15 years and then transitioned to VSP, which is healthcare, not-for-profit legal entity. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's quite a storied history. And you're sort of known throughout at least in procurement circles, you're known as one of the CPOs in the world who's really on the bleeding edge of whether it's process or technology. You always seem to be trying to acquire new skills and find easier ways of doing things. Is that, you feel like that's been a large driver of your success and why your teams have been so successful?
It's interesting. You hear people talk about people, process, technology, and you can't look at them one in a vacuum. You have to look at the three together and develop a plan to really not only understand the company that you're working for, its mission, its vision, its values, but really to leverage people, process, technology. Start with the composition of the company, and then honestly at VSP we have a value of having fun. So which is kind of a nice entree into Moola. I had a tagline, spin it like it's yours, which quickly morphed into SILY, the acronym. And from SILY, we developed Moola. And Moola is actually our mascot. It's a purple furry creature. Mark, I know you've seen Moola. Partnering with marketing, we've developed video vignettes, messaging, developed Moola, and Moola will show up at corporate events, business team meetings, etc. And quickly, Moola has become a celebrity on campus. It's not uncommon, that somebody comes by and takes a selfie with Moola. But we've had a lot of fun. We've developed, tchotchkes, coffee cups, calendars. But again, it was all about having fun and being true to our culture.
Yeah, awesome. And so, thinking about the whole concept of Moola and thinking about the concept of SILY, why Moola? Why did you create Moola?
Yeah, interesting. So I joined in December of 2013. I realized quickly, and let me back up. The approach I took was really to listen, learn, and then lead. So I had a plan, developed a 100-day plan that really looked at our culture and some of the entrenched values that we had, tenured staff, and realizing the value of having fun. I realized right away that taking a more compliant, transactional approach to delivering value wasn't going to work. The CEO and CFO asked that I join VSP really to deliver value. So partnering with marketing, we got creative, and with the tagline of SILY, spend it like it's yours, really looked at how we were going to transform the organization, what behaviors that we wanted to address, the norms. We didn't have a policy that says thou shall use procurement, and we really didn't until year 3 of the initiative. It was more about, identifying the values that we needed to change and having fun with it. And we really did with Moola. It was a creative idea, courtesy of our marketing team, our chief marketing officer at the time, who really provided incredible insights on how to transform the organization and drive that behavioral change that we were looking for.
Love it. And so when you started that conversation with marketing, I mean, typically procurement and marketing, especially if there isn't already a relationship built, it's not exactly the best relationship in the world, because marketing feels like you're going to take away from branding and all that other kind of stuff. Now we're sort of switching it with your approach of look, we appreciate everything that you do and all the branding knowledge that you have, and let's apply it to our team. Do you think that that's why they helped so much, because you basically asked them for their advice versus forcing your advice upon them?
Well, flashback. So 5 years ago, 5 autonomous business units operating independently with separate P&L responsibility was our starting point. And marketing realized they had similar challenges from a branding perspective,
Interesting.
from logo management, from messaging external. So by partnering, we were bringing customers to them that they then could get in front of. Similar story with our legal department. Legal wasn't seeing a lot of contracts. We had, people in the business signing contracts, committing, obligating the company to a supplier engagement, absent legal involvement.
Right.
Our information security team, similar. We weren't vetting and identifying, to the extent that we are today, cybersecurity risks. So we became, I don't want to position this as the gatekeeper, but we became the entree for these other departments, shared service center functions, to get better engagement with the various business units, those 5 business units. So
Brilliant.
it's been very much a collaborative partnership that we have with marketing, with our IT function, with our legal function, with our finance function, frankly.
Awesome. I've got a question from the group here on supplier diversity. With all the focus on supplier diversity in Fortune 500 companies, do you find that a big focus on this is critical within your organization or within Fortune 500 companies in general? And how would you advise us to sell the idea into leadership if we don't have something like that set up already?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a gentleman, and I'm at a loss for his last name, but he runs Supplier Diversity at Apple. Scott is his first name. And again, drawing a blank on his last name. He actually wrote a great book on how to position the supplier diversity initiative within a company by looking at the client, the customer revenue that is potentially at risk by not having a robust program.
Mm.
So I've always been a proponent of supplier diversity at Oracle, Salesforce, and now VSP. And in my opinion, it's a way of paying back to the community and, again, doing the right thing for the community and developing diverse suppliers by giving them access to your company. So while we have a program, it's not as robust as I would like. It is still in that storming, forming stage.
Yeah.
But let me find the book that Scott has written, and it really helps develop, justify a supplier diversity program. It gives you a very quantifiable way of justifying the program. But I'll find it and put it out on the Foundry for you.
Cool. A message from Michael Lycan here. Thanks, Michael. Scott Vels, is that it? Vols?
Yes, Scott Vowles. Thank you.
Yeah, very good.
Great
Awesome.
book.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks,
That's
Michael.
great. Okay. Next question is, what are you focused on for 2020 planning? Is it cost reduction? Is it process improvement? Is it risk mitigation? Where are you focusing for 2020?
So risk mitigation is always top of mind. We have a very good engagement model with our Office of Information Security as well as compliance and legal. We're looking to expand that into a more encompassing supplier management program. So that's our top priority. And then I look at our technology stack. I won't mention who our partner is today, but they've announced one of their products, is end of life. So we're actively looking at a purchase to order tool. So that'll be top of mind for next year and for the next couple of years. But really, risk mitigation is top of mind. We're in the healthcare space. We deal with personal health information, personal identifiable information. So we partner well with our Office of Information Security to vet those concerns.
Cool. Very, very cool. Jumping back to the communications aspect of thing, it took VSP what seems like a very short amount of time to change the mindset of the organization around what procurement is, what it can do, and really get people on board. How maybe set our expectations a little bit. I mean, obviously you had a marketing strategy behind it. You had a marketing plan. People were helping from the marketing aspect of things. How long generally does it take to change an internal org's mind about procurement?
So interesting. I joined again December 13th. My first meeting with the CEO and his staff was, of all days, February 14th, Valentine's Day of 2014. So in that period of, let's say 2 months, I was meeting with key executives, really discovering, learning, listening, more importantly, to what their challenges were with procurement. So formulating a plan, I developed, my first 100 days that morphed quickly into, based on guidance from a senior executive, that I shouldn't be overly ambitious given our culture and given some of the inherent challenges. So I moved from 100 days to, in essence, 6 months. So almost doubling that 100-day plan based on our culture. And as I reflect, that was a key learning. What I missed is I came to VSP with my plan and was executing. What I neglected to do was adjust based on our culture. So when executing, just be mindful of your company's culture, its mission, its vision, its values, that culture that you're expected to operate within. And then as part of your discovery, you're listening and you're learning, really formulate, is it a greenfield? Meaning, are you starting fresh? Is it a fresh initiative? Or is there legacy issues? So my response initially, Mark, was going to be it depends, right? It depends on a number of factors, but really take account of if you're starting with a clean slate, a green field, or if you're picking up a responsibility where previously it was unsuccessful. Because in those cases, you're not at ground zero, you're somewhere 6, 8, 10 feet below the surface, having to extricate yourself from what your predecessor may have done or not done. So really, really listen and learn that starting position. Develop a baseline. You know, it's not only what the business expects of you, the importance placed on the role, the expectations coming from above. So identify, you know, that landscape, but also suss out your team's capabilities, their competencies. And Mark, as you know, we've used Negotiations Ninja to give you a plug in strengthening our negotiation skills, competencies within the team. So also technology. What's the state of your technology? What tools do you have? What tools do you need? Formulate a budget. You know, assess your policy, your process, your practices. So really allow yourself some time to do a very thorough assessment, sussing out kind of that baseline, and from that listening and learning, formulate a plan, and then align that back to your mission, your values, your vision, your culture, et cetera, to make sure that everything. We have an expression here, I'm sorry, with them, what's in it for me? And we turn that to say what's in it for them. So everything that we were executing on, it was all about them, our internal
Love
customer,
that.
our supplier. So what's in it for me? What's in it for them? And when we pitch, we'd understand the needs of the audience, what their motivators were, what their needs were, what they thought of us. So we'd do some discovery before going into a meeting. And again, we'd make it about them, and we'd gear our message. And over time, by delivering value, bringing value back to them, demonstrating that value proposition, more business would flow to us. You know, in year 3.5, we start talking, well, we need a policy. And we started with ramping the policy. So even today, we don't have a policy that is similar to what I had at Oracle, because our culture is different here at VSP. Oracle was more about command and control, a mandated environment. And VSP, in a lot of respects, is very entrepreneurial, very agile, similar to what Salesforce was. So we've taken an entirely different approach, and it's, you know, distill a Kevin Costner movie, you know, Field of Dreams. We built it, and the business has been then bringing their opportunities to us based on the value that we've delivered back to them.
Love it. Awesome. I love that you mentioned there you got to pay attention to culture, because I think so often we come in with a preconceived idea about what we should apply. And so we've got a template that we just plan on pasting over, so to
Right.
speak, wherever we were going, not paying attention to culture. So I love that you've played that in. We got a question here from the group from Jay. It's, have you run a CBA on your procurement technology? And if so, has it played out as you originally anticipated?
Yeah, cost benefit analysis. And I guess I'm somewhat biased, given my 30 years in the space. When I joined, we had a very antiquated purchase to order tool that we updated with the new UI. We had a sourcing tool that wasn't getting used, and that was the limit of the investment that we had made. So I know from experience, you can't manage, you can't measure what you can't see. So we implemented a spin analytics tool to help us develop the wave strategy, the sourcing strategy. And also from a, call it what you want, quid pro quo, balance of trade, reciprocal trading, it helped us win fans and sales by saying, you know, Acme Incorporated, you know, are they a client today, a customer today from a sell into perspective? Oh, by the way, we buy from Acme Incorporated, and this is the extent of what we buy, who buys, the value, you know, of that relationship, doing a 12-month, 24-month look back, et cetera. So technology definitely plays a key role. So we now have a spin analytics tool. We have a cloud-based spin analytics tool, sourcing tool. We also intake and pipeline of our projects. We manage through a cloud-based tool. We still have that same shopping cart tool that has been updated. We have a contract lifecycle management tool. So I have been successful in investing. And as I've invested in the technology, I haven't done the thorough CVA that was suggested, but I know I've been demonstrating the value and sharing the wealth of information that we're now capturing with various stakeholders outside of my team. So when we do a business review, I can quickly tally the number of projects that are in flight with that business, who their top suppliers are. We call them key insights. So we have a monthly key insight report that we deliver back to the business.
Awesome.
To show spend under management savings, the number of flights that have been booked, how they've been booked, contract cycle times, by role, by contract type. So we have an arsenal of data that is at our disposal that helps our engagement with the business. And what we measure today, we do track and we do put SLAs out there, and we do drive accountability within the team as well as the business partners that we work with.
Yeah, awesome. How important do you think it is to have those SLAs, those internal SLAs, public to like the other business departments?
Well, first you have to track it, measure it for a period of time so you can really assess what is a reasonable SLA, and then it's that internal negotiation. But when you have a large internal customer coming to you and saying, what we're seeing, is this, you have to deal with that myth and speak to the facts. So
Yeah.
by sharing SLAs, you speak to the facts, you publish the results, and you show what the trend lines are. So it demystifies the conversation now. And again, you're speaking to the facts, and you can, if there's an anomaly, you can pull the anomaly out and say, yes, this is what our turn time was specific to that engagement, but overall, this is what our performance has been for that period. It also helps from a budgeting standpoint. If you're operating outside your service level agreement, your OLA, and there's an expectation from above that you stay within it, it's a conversation starter to say, well, to get there, we need these resources in order to drive that type of performance expectation.
Yeah, very cool. Totally agree with you. Question from Mike is, given your business and data content, what are your thoughts on GDPR and whether or not the US is going to have some sort of adoption on that? And then how are you starting to position your procurement team to work with vendors around data control and GDPR and all that kind of stuff?
So we are GDPR compliant. We're headquartered in California. California has their own version of data privacy that they've instituted. So all of the engagements that we have with the business undergo data privacy assessment. And we have a strong relationship with a group called Office of Information Security to undergo information security assessment. So we are GDPR compliant, even to the extent now California has their own data privacy law that they've enacted. We have our contract lifecycle management tools set up. Every contract record that we create has a series of questions to vet out data privacy concerns. Is it PHI, PII, PCI? What access? Are they going to be on site, et cetera? And we ferret that out quickly. And then based on the response, it starts shooting the record to the appropriate parties to engage and assess. So we have a pretty good program in place. If anything, with a new CISO joining, we probably have over-architected it, and we're actually revisiting the program to make sure that we're focused on the right risk concerns. But we're also, in our supplier management program, we've developed a risk segmentation strategy, and we're implementing that now at the supplier onboarding stage. So we have a number of touch points. When the supplier onboards, we vet out the risk, identify it, engage. But then specific to a statement of work or an opportunity, we're revisiting that risk assessment to make sure it's appropriate by engaging the right parties.
Love it. Within your supplier risk assessment, is it how are you assessing the different risk levels? Is it financial risk that you're looking at, legal risk, operational risk, all those things combined? Or is it sort of like a anecdotal, like, okay, we think this is going to be risky? Because what I find a lot of companies struggle with is putting a risk model in the hands of a procurement person to basically do a drop down menu kind of idea of where they think it is. How do you tie into your risk department there to make a good, robust risk model?
Yeah, it's a collaborative. Excuse me. It's a collaborative. So we have a group of individuals that all have a role to play. So our compliance team, our Office of Information Security, our
Awesome.
legal team, procurement, accounts payable, and you touched on it. It's financial, it's reputational risks. It is cybersecurity risk. There's a number of risk factors that get scored, and there's a weighted scoring, a weighted scorecard that is in the background that everyone inputs into, that then develops a risk score for that supplier that gets managed.
Very cool. Very, very cool. There's so many organizations today, I think, that don't take that aspect of supplier onboarding as seriously as they should. And we should, right? We should just have a model in place to do that. So for those of
Yep.
you that are watching and listening, it may be a good idea for, if you don't have it already, work with your risk department and all the other departments involved and get something, at least something simple in place so that you can start measuring risk on onboarding on an ongoing example. Another question from the crowd is, uh, given all the changes that have been happening within procurement, especially over the last 5 years with respect to RPA and machine learning and even AI, for a new procurement person coming in, that's quite a lot to absorb, and chances are they haven't covered it if they were at school. So, as a new procurement person coming in, what should we be focusing on, and where should we really be spending our efforts? Should it be on the traditional sourcing model side? Should we be focusing more on the technology side of things? Where do we need to be to really ramp up quickly?
Great question. What I've done in my career is I've been a proponent of attending conferences, the right conferences, to learn from others, what others are doing in the space. I read, I follow the Foundry, I follow Mark Raffan, I follow others that are in the space. Um, it's interesting. At this point, there are no original ideas,
Yeah,
original concepts, right? It's understanding what others are doing in the space, how they're leveraging RPA, artificial intelligence, machine learning. There will become a point, I think it's still very early, blockchain, how systems are tightly integrated and transacting, seamlessly, transparently, without, you know, human involvement or minimal human involvement. That's the future. Um, you know, I'm hyper focused on technology as an enabler. I envision kind of a near term where we give the business access to the tools that traditionally have been held by procurement: spend analysis, sourcing, RFX engines. Um, self-services tools already exist in the purchase to pay or source to settle space, but further enabling the business and allowing procurement to become truly the trusted advisor. So we're more of a consultant to the business. Consultant meaning they engage, they're not required. So there's no policy per se, but by demonstrating the value, we have a seat at the table. So it's all value driven. And they have access to the tools, and we play an oversight role, but they run a sourcing event. They do a spend analysis. They create a sourcing wave strategy. The reality is, I think procurement sourcing is fooling themselves thinking they're subject matter experts around a media buy. It's
right.
the business that knows that. We need to enable them by providing tools to them that we manage on their behalf, and we play that advisor to them, but we're enabling them to be more successful on their time scale.
Agreed. Totally agree with you. Another question from the group: what are you reading or listening to keep up with new ideas? And you touched on this in terms of the things that, whether it's the Procurement Foundry or all that kind of stuff. Is there a specific conference set that you usually go to? And for someone who wants to do more of those type of events, where should they go?
Well, interesting. So I sit on the advisory for Sourcing Industry Group, um, and I've learned a trick. And there's ProcureCon, there's a number of ISM, there's a number of conferences out there. What I've learned over the years, if you present, they give you free access. You have to pick up your travel and entertainment expense, but there's no registration fees. So if you offer to present, they'll waive the reg fees. And then it becomes a question if it's close, it's more affordable. But there's a number of sources out there beyond Negotiations Ninja. There's Art of Procurement. Honestly, LinkedIn. Get connected on LinkedIn. Yeah. There's the Foundry. You'd be amazed at the content that's on LinkedIn, just within your network, that people are sharing, that they're making available. And I have found that a great way to stay current. I listen to podcasts, TED Talks. Partner internally. There are subject matter experts. I'm involved in a supply chain initiative, launching a new product, and I've refreshed my competencies, skills around supply chain just by partnering with a peer here within the business. So don't just look external. There's subject matter expertise within the company. Mark, we talked about the chief marketing officer. Go have lunch with your CMO and understand how they run a campaign, how they message externally, how they manage their brand internally as well as externally. So, partner not only externally but internally within the organization, and find those key people and learn from them how they've been successful and how they've navigated your culture.
Yeah, very good. I think for a lot of people, it comes down to not necessarily what to do, but to do it.
Right.
There's so much information, there's so much content, and so a lot of people are like, just, I think, maybe overwhelmed with the volume, and so they're trying to figure out, okay, where do I start? For those of you listening, for those of you who want to really improve your career and grow, the key is not trying to figure out where to start, it's just to start. Find something that you can start reading, and start reading that. Be disciplined about it every single day, and just set time in your calendar to start learning, because that time is going to be super valuable to how your career develops. I think just starting is the key. Mike Cadu, self-serving question. Mike, no, I'm not asking this question. You can wait. You can have that offline. That's a terrible question.
Hey, Mark, let me add a point. I was going to show you my list. I'm going to show you a blank page. I keep a book on my desk, and I write out every day what I need to do. And granted, I don't always accomplish, but if it's go meet with, Kate, I'll write down, meet with Kate. I'll schedule an appointment. I'll go meet with Kate. Get the gratification of checking it off. That feedback of seeing something accomplished, I think, is important, because if you try to manage it within your mind, it is more difficult, right? And just getting that visual reference, these are the things I need to do. And it sounds very simple. Use Post-its, stickies, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Technology out there. I've seen people manage their email where they do it in email, where they send themselves an email, then they respond to the email when they close it out. So whatever works for you, a list that I keep on my desk, and I write it out, I check it off, and I show my status. If it's completed, I line through it. If I've started it and there's still work, I'll check mark it, add a note, but have a visual reference that you can track your progress. Because if you try to keep it in upstairs, in your mind, you won't get that gratification of what's been completed.
Yeah. And I mean, so for the people watching, there's the way that the brain works. When you've completed something and you achieved something, your brain actually releases dopamine, which gives you this feeling of like deep satisfaction. And that's essentially what Greg is talking about. So when you start checking things off and achieving things, that's when it starts to become real for you. And that's when discipline turns into habit, and that habit turns into addiction.
Right.
And you can start just building on that and growing that and growing that. And it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of the more you do it, the better you get, the more you want to do it, and so on and so forth. Yeah, very, very good. Another question that I have for you, Greg, when you were going through your career, what was the best piece of advice that someone gave you to really grow your career?
Well, I reflect, and I've worked for a lot of great leaders and not so great. And advice has been passed on, distilled along the journey. I had one leader who said, when messaging, spend the words, make sure that I'm addressing the needs of the audience, whoever that audience is, supplier, internal, leader, whatever. Make sure that my message is more geared to what they want out of the discussion than what I want to achieve, what I want to communicate. So it's not about me, it's about them, right?
Mm.
I've also had somebody along the way tell me, when modeling your style, developing your style, don't simply mimic, duplicate what somebody's doing. Pick and choose in that style what may work for you based on your personality, based on your skills, competencies, whatever. So create your own unique leadership style. Just don't simply duplicate what somebody else is doing, because they may be doing it for specific intent, purpose, based on their competency, skills, whatever. Um, but it is interesting. When I was developing, and I always had a plan. What's my 2-year horizon, 5-year horizon from a career progression standpoint? And admittedly, things have kind of slowed down now that I've been at it for 30 years. But I always had a plan. What comes in 2 years, what comes in 5 years. And when I engage people today, I ask the question, so share your plan. You know, what's your expectation in 2 years, in 5 years? Where do you see yourself? What responsibilities? And honestly, a large majority don't have a plan. They're just living the day and moving through the day without that plan. So I would encourage everyone, if you have aspirations of doing something more, formulate a plan. And again, it gets back to the conversation that we just had. Write it down and progress your plan. Make sure that you're executing against that plan. And if it's becoming CEO, let's start with being realistic in the plan. But what does it take to become CEO? So interesting, early in my career, if I wanted to become a manager, director, VP, whatever, I started reading job descriptions. What were people looking for? What were the qualifications? What were the prereqs for the role? And if it required a master's, I went and got my master's. If it required a certification I went and got my certification. Don't just expect in 2 years, 5 years, you're going to wake up and be anointed whatever role you're looking for. You have to work for it, right? And understand what's expected of that role and develop a plan, execute against the plan.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Um, Still on the career track, now that you've moved from high tech to sort of the more healthcare focus, what do you see as the biggest differences between those industries, and how did you have to adjust procurement wise to moving from high tech to another industry?
Well, the biggest change really was moving from a publicly traded company to a not-for-profit.
Hmm.
Um, a publicly traded company, if you were to tie transactions, there were revenue recognition rules that you had to adhere to. And I won't go into the rule unless somebody's interested, but in a not-for-profit, you don't have the same, let's say, constraints, because you're not providing a 10Q, a 10K to the SEC. you're reporting into a state regulatory body. So it's just a different operating environment. I use that as one example. So always understand that operating model that you're entering, and even assess it before you accept the job to make sure that it's a good fit for you and for them. Because if you overlook it, you could be walking into a role potentially that's not a good fit for you. So moving out of a publicly traded company into not-for-profit, the whole balance of trade was different. The operating model was different. I used to talk EPS at Salesforce, earnings per share, and what was my impact on EPS. Whereas here, it's a different equation when you equate savings to, is it EBITDA? What is it? So really understanding, what the priorities are, what's top of mind, the operating model differences before you accept a job, I think is critical to a successful outcome.
Yeah, very cool. When you think back about your success, do you have like a specific set of habits that you do on a daily basis that you think have benefited you? Like some people have just like a solid morning routine, for example, where they, maybe hit the gym, do some reading, then
Yep.
they get to work. Do you have a routine that you have?
Yeah, it's a good question. Let me respond this way, Mark. Reflecting over my career, what could I have done better?
Sure.
So let's take if you will, shine a light on potentially what I could have done better in engaging with customer. Um, my background is, if I had to kind of focus on an area, is probably operations, and I excel at operations. What I need to, even though I've had a marketing campaign here at VSP, in hindsight, as I reflect on my career, I should have been more of a marketeer, a
Mm,
salesman, where I meet and I meet quarterly with the business, but regular meetings. I worked for a CFO that was known for his drive-bys, as I like to call them, where he would just get up and walk around, do his walkabouts, drive-bys with his team as well as the business. In reflection, that's probably an area that I would encourage people to be more of an extrovert. Get out there, meet with the business on a regular basis, have your key insights, your facts to share, but make it more developing the relationship and
mm,
less about the successes that you're delivering, but more about the strength of the relationship. So when they have that epiphany that they want to buy something, it's an automatic that they come to you, right? Because of that relationship and the value that you bring back to the conversation. So in hindsight, that's an area potentially that I could have done a lot better job. But I do get into the office early. I get in 6:30, 6:45 into the office. I found that my most productive time is up until about 9 o'clock, and that's when I try to get most of my email and project work done, because then you get into meetings, and then I do get on to email in the evenings, but from a work-life balance perspective, you have to manage that, right? Because as I like to say, the one constant in life is family. It's not your job. So don't forget about family. That should be your priority, and your balance of work and
mm-hmm.
life needs to be focused on family, because it is that one constant.
Yeah,
So you
very
try to
cool.
manage it, right? You try to balance it.
Left field question. Are you a coffee drinker? Oh, right. Energy drinks. Forget about the coffee. We're just mainlining energy drinks
So I mainline energy, plug to Rockstar, and then I go
uh,
have my quad shot later in the day.
oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. I just recently quit coffee for the third time.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, it's going okay so far. It's been like a week. I'll admit, like because I was like a 6 cup a day guy,
Yeah.
and then the first 3 days were the worst 3 days of my life. Like I had the worst headaches. It was like coming off of a really serious, and it is really coming off of a drug. It was
It
just
is.
brutal. So now I'm trying to see if I can go without coffee. So far, so good. It's not too bad. I don't have the crazy ups and downs like you would with caffeine. It's more like stable during the day,
Yep.
but I will admit that I do miss the energy that caffeine provides.
The
Um,
key, the key there is to get off sugar.
yeah, totally.
So take sugar out of the equation and then work through the coffee. I do my energy drink first thing and then coffee later in the day, and that's it.
Nice. Very, very cool.
Yep.
Um, back to back to procurement. when when you're developing your teams, do you go for talent first and then skill set, or skill set then talent?
Yeah, it's interesting. There was a Wall Street article probably about 3 months ago, 2 months ago, that talked about what sport provides the best contribution to a team. And believe it or not, it was water polo.
Oh,
Um, so when I get a CV, a resume, I will look at their resume and I'll look at their interest. And if they played sports, especially a collegiate sport, when they were truly a student athlete, that's in the plus sign, because I know they are naturally competitive and I'm competitive as well. Um, but, I look for a number of things. Um, do they have an appetite to learn? Do they want to invest in themselves? And is that relevant, or does that speak to the resume CV that they've made those investments and continue to make those investments? Um, and honestly, mix of talent, this is going to potentially come out wrong. You want type A's, but you also want those individuals who are satisfied in their role, um, and fully competent, but satisfied in their role and maybe not looking to take the next step. And they've been labeled steady eddies, if you will. But just recognize you need a mix. You can't
yeah,
all be type A competitors, because then you'll start feeding on each other and it becomes more of a shark tank.
yeah,
And that's not healthy for the organization either. So I don't have the right answer. Um, I know what has worked for me in my career, and it is a mix. I do look for competitive type A personalities for the right role. I do look for people that may have more of a technology lean, a policy process lean. I do look for people that are constant learners, people that want to invest in themselves, that do invest in themselves, because those are the learners and those are the people that you need. But you also have to look within the organization, because don't surround yourself with all procurement types. I have a marketing type in the business. I have a finance type within the business, and the business is, my procurement team. So look for a variety. Um, you know, the diversity of thought helps develop a plan, helps you execute. If you're all of the same mindset, it's a little more challenging to execute.
yeah. Very cool. Question from Michael Lycan. Great question. He's always focused on more capability versus experience when hiring. Do you agree or disagree? Do you look for experience first or capability first?
It depends. It depends on the need, right? And again, it gets back to maintaining a mix within the team, the composition of the team. Um, if you have responsibility for a category of spend, pick one: IT, marketing, professional services, whatever it might be. You may go more experiential based initially and then complement with capability. So it really
Mhm.
depends on the bespoke talent that you have within the team, where you need to grow, where you need to invest, the call it market penetration that you have inside the company within a category of spend. So there's a number of factors. It's just not an easy answer of capability versus experience.
Yeah. Have you guys used any personality tests to determine where there may be some latent skills?
We've done Myers-Briggs, we've done Strong. We also have a competency matrix by role, by maturation of the role. So there's a number of tools that we use to make sure that the hire is a good fit, but we also use it to develop the individual.
Hmm.
We call them IDPs, individual development plans. They do their own self-assessment where they want to invest. It gets validated with their manager, with their leader. They agree a plan, and which is formulated into an IDP that has set curriculum around kind of what we need to focus on as a business unit, and then they are held accountable to execute on that IDP.
Yeah, very cool.
It's actually built into their bonus program.
Oh, neat. Okay,
Yeah,
so their personal development, their bonus is based on their personal development to some degree.
correct.
Awesome. Yeah, what a
Yeah, it's
great way
weighted,
to
but it is built into their bonus end of
love
year.
that. Love that idea. That's really good. You've got and I can say this because I've been in your team and taught with your team. You've got an incredible team
Thank you.
with great players. A few of them have been up for awards, and in fact, recently Siddharth Ramesh is coming up for an award as well with SIG. Um, do you, when you're pushing your team to develop and you've got them on these development plans, um, how important is it to you to get them noticed? Because it seems, at least to me, that you put a lot of effort into getting your team noticed and getting your team to excel. The risk, of course, exists that you've built up this incredible player with all this talent, all this ability, gets noticed, and then potentially that person gets poached by another organization.
Right.
You don't seem afraid of that risk at all.
No, I encourage it. I invest. I become that individual supporter. I put them through training, whatever their IDP is about. I support it, and if they leave, great, because now that knowledge has gone into the business or has left the company into another company. It's interesting. I'll take Salesforce as an example. When I joined Salesforce, it was a team of 5 that quickly became, when I left, over 90 people, both outsource, in-source model. But a lot of those people are no longer there. They're, head of procurement at Uber, head of procurement at Twitter. I can give you a who's list of where the team now sits. And that, in my opinion, is the greatest accomplishment as a leader,
Mm.
is you have built up a knowledge base within the space, within the industry, and these people are out taking ideas that you maybe influenced, helped develop, and they're executing at different companies. I think as a leader, that's what you live for, and that's paying it back. That's the responsibility that I undertook when I started my journey, 30 odd years ago, was, you know, I'll never stand in front of somebody and prevent them from leaving. I'll encourage it. I'll provide a reference, and they know that, and I support it.
Yeah, what an excellent attitude. I think it builds the industry, it builds that knowledge base, and further to that, it just builds that person. And helping with
Right.
their career is probably one of the most gratifying things that we get to do as leaders. And I think that's an amazing thing that you guys do very, very well. We're coming up to time here, and we're almost going to be done. So my apologies for everyone who hasn't had their question answered. Greg, if there's one more thing that you want to leave the listeners and the viewers with, what would it be?
Wow. Wasn't prepared for that, Mark.
Sorry.
I guess, honestly, I'm at the twilight of my career. I would ask, as you progress through your career, ask yourself, am I leaving the right legacy? We talked about developing talent and having the talent flourish elsewhere in the company, external. Just make sure as you're developing your legacy, are you leaving the right legacy, not only for your profession, but for your family, and
Mm.
manage that work-life balance. Because, the one constant in life, and I've been fortunate, I've been married 37 years, and my lovely wife has put up with a lot of crap, pardon me, during that 37 years. But, and I've got 2 grown sons who are both successful in their own right. Just make sure you're leaving the right legacy. So always second guess, ask yourself, are you doing the right thing for your family? Are you doing the right thing for your company? Are you doing the right thing for your career?
I love that advice. So good. Greg, it's been an honor and a privilege to have you on. Thank you so much for investing time with us today. Massive, massive value that's been added. I'm getting messages here from a ton of people just saying they really, really appreciate your time. So thank you so much for investing it with us. And if people want to follow you, if they're not already following you, can they reach out to you on LinkedIn?
By all means. Yeah, I would
Awesome.
love to start a conversation on LinkedIn. My contact information's out there. Mark,
Awesome.
I appreciate your time and Michael, what he's doing with the Procurement Foundry. I love the knowledge share, in doing it where people are doing it freely, right?
Yeah,
I think is great
it's
because
so
sharing
great.
best practice, that's what it's all about, paying it back.
Totally, totally agree with you. And thank you to everyone. Thank you, everyone who joined today. Really, really, really enjoyed your questions, really enjoyed the engagement. As a heads up, this is recorded, so I will leave this on the Procurement Foundry later today on the Slack channel. You can access it there. And for those of your friends or colleagues that weren't able to join, they'll be able to see it once they sign up in the Procurement Foundry. If you are not already a member and you just got this invite as a result of a friend of yours inviting you out, thank you so much for joining us. We'd love for you to be a part of the Procurement Foundry. You can sign up at www.procurementfoundry.com, and we look forward to engaging with you in our Slack channel. Again, Greg, thanks so much and have a great day.
Thanks, Mark. I enjoyed